Emily Kane had always found comfort in faces that didn't move. Porcelain, glass, resin. Each doll she owned held a perfect stillness that people never could. They didn't lie, they didn't leave, they only watched. Her living room was a museum of delicate stares. Shelves upon shelves of dolls lined the walls like a silent congregation, their painted eyes gleaming under soft lamplight. Some were antique porcelain with fine lace collars. Others were crude handmade rag dolls whose smiles had long since faded. Most people thought it was unnerving. Her boyfriend, Nathan, called it the doll dungeon. But Emily didn't mind. She had collected since she was a child, a fascination passed down from her grandmother, who believed every doll had a story, some sweet, some tragic. That was what Emily loved most, the stories. So when she saw the faded sign reading "Yard Sale Estate Clearance" on the corner of Maple Drive one autumn afternoon, she followed it like a whisper of fate. The house sat at the edge of town, half-eaten by ivy and years of neglect. The air smelled of dust and forgotten things. Tables sprawled across the unkempt lawn, covered in relics of a vanished life. Crystal decanters, tarnished jewelry, boxes of yellowed photos. And there, propped on a chair like a queen in exile, sat her. The doll was unlike anything Emily had ever seen. Nearly life-size from the torso up, dressed in a silk gown dulled by age. Her limbs were fabric, her head porcelain, her expression hauntingly mature, too human. Waves of brown hair framed a face painted with soft rouge lips and half-lidded eyes, giving her a strange, languid sensuality. A boudoir doll, Emily realized. Popular in the 1920s. Glamorous companions rather than toys. She bent closer. The doll's glass eyes caught the light, and for a moment, Emily swore they shimmered with something alive. A voice rasped from behind her. "You got an eye for trouble, dear." Emily turned to see an elderly woman in a moth-eaten shawl, her gray eyes sharp despite her frailty. She's beautiful," Emily said. "How much?" The old woman's lips tightened. "For her? $10? Emily blinked. "That's it?" "10, the woman said again, her tone final, then more softly. "But she doesn't belong to anyone." "Not for long." Emily frowned. "I don't—" The woman lifted a trembling hand, silencing her. "You'll take her if you must. But understand this. She's a keepsake of the old kind. Best to leave her be." Emily smiled politely, already pulling out a $10 bill. "I don't believe in ghost stories." The old woman gave a small, pitying smile. "Child, it's not the ghosts you need to fear. It's the memories that don't die." By the time Emily got home, the sun had dipped beneath the horizon, casting the town in a honeyed dusk that softened every edge. Her small, craftsman-style house sat at the end of Birchwood Lane, surrounded by oak trees that whispered with the chill of October wind. She carried the boudoir doll carefully, its weight unsettlingly human. The silk gown rustled faintly, and its porcelain face caught the flicker of the porch light like a reflection that shouldn't exist. Edward, her black and white cat, sat by the door watching her approach. His tail flicked once, then again, in short jerks of displeasure. "Relax, Ed," she murmured, unlocking the door with one hand. "It's just another addition to the family." But when she stepped inside, Edward hissed, a low, guttural sound that tore through the quiet. His back arched, fur standing on end. He bolted down the hallway, disappearing behind the couch. Emily sighed. "Seriously?" Setting the doll on her dining table, she switched on the lights. The house greeted her in familiar stillness. Shelves lined with her pristine collection. Each doll perfectly posed, perfectly clean. Yet the new one changed the atmosphere entirely. It wasn't just there, it inhabited. Something about its presence warped the space, as though the air had thickened, bending subtly toward it. The doll sat upright, legs dangling, head tilted just slightly toward her, as if listening. Emily shook the thought off and began wiping dust from the silk gown, careful around the fragile porcelain. As she brushed near the neck seam, she noticed faint brownish stains along the fabric. Rust, she thought, or old glue. Looks like you've had better days, she murmured, smiling to herself. Nathan arrived around 8, the crunch of tires on gravel followed by his familiar knock, 3 sharp raps. He was tall, good-natured, with the easy charm of someone who always took life in stride. But the moment he stepped in, his grin faltered. Okay, that's new. He pointed toward the boudoir doll. She's gorgeous, right? Emily said almost defensively. Gorgeous? He laughed uneasily. She looks like she's judging me already. She's from the 1920s, a boudoir doll. I found her at a yard sale for $10. Nathan raised a brow. You and your cursed thrift finds. What did the seller say? Nothing worth noting, she lied and then added. Just that she's old. They ordered pizza, opened a bottle of cheap wine, and put on a movie. For a while, laughter replaced the undercurrent of tension. As the night grew colder, something about the house changed again. Halfway through the film, Nathan frowned. Did you hear that? Emily paused. Hear what? He turned his head toward the hallway. Sounded like tapping. They listened. Nothing. She rolled her eyes. It's probably Edward. He's sulking somewhere. But when she got up to check, she found Edward curled tight beneath the sofa, trembling. His eyes reflected wide in the light, like 2 coins of glass. The doll remained seated where she had left it, only its head now faced slightly toward the living room. Emily froze, heart skipping. She hadn't touched it since dinner. Nathan came up behind her, voice low. Did you move it? No, she whispered. They stared for a long moment, both unwilling to speak the obvious. Finally, Emily picked up the doll and carried it to her display room. She placed it on the top shelf facing the window. There. Happy? Nathan exhaled. Ecstatic. Later that night, they fell asleep in her room, the soft hum of her heater filling the silence. But at exactly 3:02 a.m., Nathan woke with a start. Something was moving near the edge of the bed, slow, deliberate, like fabric brushing the floor. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, a shadow wavered across the wall, tall and thin, tilting its head unnaturally. He reached out to touch Emily's arm, only to gasp as pain sliced down his back. 3 long, burning lines, as if clawed by invisible hands. Emily shot upright. What happened? Nathan was pale, sweating, staring toward the doorway. But there was nothing there. Only the faint sound of soft footsteps retreating down the hall and a distant, hollow knock echoing through the house. Once, twice, thrice. 3:03 a.m. The next morning, Nathan was gone. Not gone like a man late for work. Gone as if the night itself had swallowed him up. His side of the bed was still dented, his phone still on the nightstand, but his keys and jacket had vanished. Emily found him later that afternoon, sitting in his car outside, engine off, staring blankly through the windshield. He jumped when she tapped the glass. Jesus, Em. You scared me, she said, opening the door. You left without saying anything. He ran a hand down his face. I just needed air, that whatever happened last night, it felt wrong, like something was in the room with us. She tried to smile, though her skin prickled with the memory. It was probably just a nightmare. You scratched yourself in your sleep. Nathan looked at her, and for a moment his expression softened. Yeah, maybe. But he didn't come back inside. That night, Emily sat alone on the couch. The house too still, the silence too thick. Even Edward was gone, darting outside the moment the door cracked open and refusing to return. His food bowl remained untouched. At 3 a.m., she woke to a sound that froze her breath. Knock, knock, knock. 3 precise taps from somewhere deep within the house. She sat up, pulse hammering. "Nathan?" she called softly, even though she knew he wasn't there. No answer. She grabbed her phone, its screen blindingly bright, and followed the sound to the hallway. Her camera app glowed faintly, recording as she moved. The knocks came again, 3 slow, rhythmic beats, like something trying to mimic human persistence. They came from the doll room. Her throat tightened. She approached the door. The air grew colder with every step, the kind of cold that doesn't belong in a heated home. Wet and metallic, like a cellar that had been sealed too long. Emily pushed the door open. The doll collection stared back at her, an army of glass eyes in the dark. Every single one faced her now. And on the top shelf, the boudoir doll sat pristine and elegant, except its once smooth porcelain cheeks were streaked with what looked like old tears of grime, and its silk dress had darkened around the seams, damp as though it had been crying through the fabric itself. Then came the smell. It rolled through the room in a wave, sickly sweet and putrid, like rotting fruit tangled with decay. Emily gagged, covering her nose. "What the hell?" She leaned closer, and the stench grew unbearable. It was coming from the doll, from inside it. That was when the lights flickered, once, twice, and the faint sound of humming filled the room, a woman's voice, distant and strained, singing a tune too old to remember. Emily backed out slowly, slamming the door shut. For the rest of the night, she sat awake in the living room with every light on. By the end of the week, the knocking had become routine. Always at 3 a.m. Always 3 knocks. Always from a different wall. Nathan refused to stay over anymore. "I'm sorry, Em, but that thing, it's not right. You need to get rid of it." "I can't just throw it away," she said. "It's valuable. It's cursed." She laughed a little too sharply. "You sound like that woman from the yard sale." But her laugh broke halfway through, because she had called the seller earlier that day, and the number had already been disconnected. 2 nights later, the smell worsened. Emily woke coughing, her eyes watering. The scent was thick enough to taste, like spoiled meat mixed with burned sugar. She stumbled into the doll room to find the boudoir doll lying on the floor. Its head was turned completely around. She screamed, dropping her phone. When she reached down, trembling, to pick it up, she saw something beneath the doll, an old, yellowed letter tucked under its gown. The paper was brittle, nearly falling apart as she unfolded it. She wanted to be beautiful forever. He promised he could make her so. Now she waits for her reflection to return. There was no signature, no date, just a faint brown fingerprint at the corner. Emily's camera feed blinked to life then. She had set it to auto-record movement. On the screen, she saw herself entering the room moments earlier, but behind her, in the reflection of the glass cabinet, stood a figure. Tall, thin, a woman in a silk gown with an ashen face and eyes blacker than absence. The figure tilted its head the same way the doll had when she first brought it home. Emily dropped the phone. Something creaked. Then softly, so softly she thought she imagined it, came a whisper from the shadows. "Don't leave me alone again." By the time dawn broke, Emily had shoved the doll into a storage chest and duct-taped it shut. The smell seeped through anyway. Edward returned briefly that morning, limping, His fur was matted, his whiskers broken. He hissed at the chest until his throat went hoarse, then bolted out again, never to come back. That was the first time Emily considered burning it. But something stopped her. Some strange pull, like the doll was hers now. And somewhere deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the nausea, beneath the whisper that echoed through her bones, a part of her didn't want to let it go. By the third week, Emily stopped keeping track of the days. The light under the mountain sky, gray, static, and eternally humming with the faint sound of generators, made it impossible to tell one dawn from another. Outside, the world was dead and ash-ridden, but inside her little townhouse in Merritt Hollow, things were beginning to feel alive in a way that made her skin crawl. She hadn't seen Nathan in 10 days. Edward was gone, and the knocking had become voices. At first it was faint, like a radio left on in another room, fragments of sentences caught in the static. She'd wake to murmurs she couldn't quite decipher. Then one night, she finally made out a word. Emily. Whispered slowly, like the memory of a sigh. That was the night she realized the doll's eyes had changed. They had always been painted glass beautiful, but lifeless, fixed in that eternal boudoir pout. Now they reflected the light differently, deeper, as if something behind them was watching back. Emily forced herself to look away, pretending not to notice. But when she turned, her phone camera caught something else in the reflection. A second face. Smaller, closer, watching over the doll's shoulder. That same day, the power flickered in Merritt Hollow, a rare occurrence in the underground colony. The ceiling lights dimmed and glowed amber, revealing the old metalwork beneath the panels. For a moment, she thought she saw movement inside the light fixtures. Silhouettes writhing in the glass, as if trapped between the glow and the dark. When the power stabilized, the doll's chest was cracked open. The faint sound of breathing came from inside. Emily froze. She leaned close enough to hear the soft rhythm in, out, and then a whisper broke through the cadence, soft as silk. He promised us beauty. Her phone hit the floor as she stumbled back. The voice wasn't one, it was many. Layers of women's voices, all overlapping like echoes trapped in stone. He promised us forever. He lied. He left us inside her. Emily clutched her head, shaking, her pulse pounding against her temples. She didn't know who he was or what inside her meant. That night she dreamed of hands, hundreds of them, porcelain and pale, reaching up from beneath a pool of dark resin, clawing toward the surface. In the dream she could hear Nathan calling her name, his voice muffled beneath the liquid. When she reached for him, the hands pulled her down. She woke, gasping, the stench of decay stronger than ever. At 3:07 a.m., the camera on her nightstand lit up. Movement detected. She turned her head just in time to see the boudoir doll sitting in the corner of her bedroom. Not on the shelf, not in the box, but sitting neatly on her dresser, its cracked chest faintly moving. She tried to scream, but her throat locked. She could only watch as the air around it seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising off pavement, and the faint outline of something flickered into being behind it. A woman, first tall, hair twisted in an old-fashioned bun, her face a map of cracks and veins like porcelain left in the sun. Her mouth was moving, but another voice spoke instead, deeper, male, cold as marble. She's almost ready. The woman's head jerked toward Emily then, as if hearing her thoughts. Her eyes were hollow pits, and through them Emily saw faces, dozens of them faint, shifting beneath her skin. Children, women, men, all whispering, all alive within her. Then they vanished. The doll slumped forward, glass eyes catching the light like tears. By morning, Emily couldn't breathe in her own home. Every corner smelled of rotting roses, of time spoiled and trapped. The mirrors began to fog from the inside. Her voice assistant turned itself on, replaying fragments of her own sentences. He promised. Forever. We're still here. She's almost ready. And beneath it all, that same song, the lullaby that had hummed in the doll room weeks ago, weaving its way through the static of her speakers. It followed her everywhere. When she took the elevator down to the lower marketplace, she could hear it through the hum of machinery. When she passed a display window, she saw the faint reflection of the doll standing behind her, even though it was locked at home. And when she finally sat in her car, trembling and sobbing into her hands, her dashboard screen glitched and flashed 3 words. Open her eyes. She didn't remember driving back. She didn't remember unlocking the door. She only remembered standing in front of the storage chest, her hands shaking as she peeled the duct tape away. Inside, the doll lay perfectly still, her chest cracked wider now like a wound waiting to breathe. Emily reached forward. And for the first time since the haunting began, she didn't feel afraid. She felt curious. When her fingers brushed the doll's cheek, the eyes moved. They rolled upward, meeting hers, and from the crack in the chest, a faint light began to pulse soft, bluish like moonlight filtered through water. The smell faded. The room grew quiet. Then faintly she heard breathing again. Only this time it wasn't just from the doll, it was all around her. From the walls, from the floorboards, from the very air itself. 100 invisible lungs drawing breath in unison. The doll's lips parted, and from them came a chorus, not one voice, but many layered, pleading, furious. He trapped us in her. He made us beautiful. Now she must feed. The light burst from the crack, flooding the room with a blinding glow. For a moment, Emily saw faces, so many faces, screaming, reaching, clawing toward her, their features warping into one another like reflections on rippling glass. And at the center of it all, a man, pale, ageless, smiling faintly as if admiring his work. Then everything went black. When Emily opened her eyes again, the room was still. The doll sat on the floor, whole once more, its face pristine, its dress immaculate, its glass eyes dark and empty. But her hands were porcelain now, smooth, pale, perfect. And when she tried to scream, her mouth didn't move. Only a painted smile remained. Nathan didn't sleep for 3 days. He told himself it was the guilt, that he shouldn't have left Emily alone after what happened that night. The claw marks had faded, but the memory hadn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he could still feel that cold, breathless moment, waking to the sound of something moving beside the bed. The police brushed it off as hysteria, maybe a break-in. But Nathan knew what he saw, and when Emily stopped answering her calls, he felt the kind of panic that doesn't need proof. By the 4th day, he was outside her house. The air was stale, metallic. No birds, no sound. The blinds were drawn tight, though he could see the faint flicker of her television through the gaps frozen on a single frame of static. The lock was still sticky with new scratches, as if someone had forced it recently. When he stepped inside, the house was colder than it should have been, and empty. Emily's keys still hung by the door. Her half-finished mug of coffee sat on the counter, the surface film curling inward like old paint. But there was no sign of her, only her cat's collar, lying twisted beside the refrigerator. The smell hit him next. Sweet at first, then sour, like something dead trying to remember perfume. It led him straight to the living room, and to the doll. The boudoir doll sat on the center table, perfectly upright. The last time Nathan had seen it, it was half broken and sealed away. Now it looked restored. Every detail, the silk gown, the lace gloves, the golden curls immaculate. The resin sheen of the skin gleamed faintly under the lamplight. But the eyes. The eyes were wrong. They were new. And they were Emily's color. Nathan's chest tightened as he stepped closer. The air vibrated faintly like the hum of high-voltage lines. His fingers hovered near the doll's cheek when the lights flickered once, twice, and a faint voice whispered through the static of the still-playing television. "He remembers us." Nathan spun, searching for the source. The voice was soft, feminine. It came again, this time from somewhere behind him. He made her perfect. His breath hitched. It wasn't just one voice. It was several layered, distant, speaking over one another in a low, rhythmic chant. He turned back toward the doll and froze. It wasn't sitting anymore. It was standing. Its tiny porcelain feet rested on the table's edge, the folds of its dress spilling downward as if gravity had meaning again. Its head tilted slightly, a child's curiosity, a predator's patience. "Emily?" The name left him in a whisper, absurd and instinctive. The doll smiled. The next hours blurred together in terror. He didn't remember running from the house. He didn't remember driving until dawn. All he remembered was the sound, that horrible echo that followed him into his car. A dozen voices giggling in unison, fading only when the sun broke through the smog above Merritt Hollow. He went to the police. They found nothing, just an empty house and a perfectly preserved antique doll. No trace of Emily. The official report listed her as missing. No evidence of foul play. But Nathan couldn't stop seeing these eyes. Weeks passed. He stopped going to work. His sleep dissolved into restless fragments. Every reflective surface began to betray him. His mirror, his phone, the dark of his coffee. They all showed her. Emily. Standing somewhere behind him, her head tilted, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. When the nightmares became unbearable, he started digging. He traced the doll's origins through auction records, private collections, old estate archives. The seller from the yard sale, Mrs. Brighton, had died days after Emily's disappearance, cardiac arrest. The house was condemned, its walls stripped of wallpaper that, according to police, had been covered in children's drawings of dolls. Every lead pulled him deeper into history until he found a name that made his blood run cold. Alaric Thorne, the doll maker, a 19th century artisan from the Scottish Highlands. His work had been famous for lifelike detail dolls that seemed to breathe, blush, even move faintly in the firelight. His clientele were aristocrats, collectors, the lonely and the vain. He promised them immortality through beauty. Then in 1893 he disappeared, along with his wife and 47 women from the nearby village. No bodies were ever found. But every one of his dolls, the ones that survived the fire in his manor, were said to bear eerily familiar faces. Emily's doll matched one of them exactly. Nathan's obsession became a ritual. He mapped the patterns carved into the doll's base, found them repeated in old manuscripts, tucked between pages of the Liber Infernum, and scrawled across the walls of catacombs in old photographs of Merritt Hollow's foundation chambers. Each symbol was a part of a seal, something designed to contain, not summon. And Merritt Hollow, built under the mountain in the name of preservation and control, was constructed right atop the remains of Alaric Thorne's estate. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a continuation. The order that governed the underground city, the same one that claimed to protect humanity after the Surface Wars, was founded by descendants of Thorne's patrons. They didn't stop him. They inherited him. On the 50th day of Emily's disappearance, Nathan returned to the house one final time. He didn't bother locking the door. He brought only a camera and a voice recorder. The air was heavy, electric, humming faintly like a generator underground. He spoke aloud, voice trembling. "Emily, if you're here, I just want you to know." The camera light flickered, the air temperature dropping several degrees in seconds. The recorder crackled, then hissed, and from that hiss came a single voice, warped and metallic, but undeniably hers. "He promised us forever." The doll's head turned. Then another one stepped from the shadows behind it, and another, each dressed in a different era's fashion. Victorian, Edwardian, mid-century, all porcelain and silk faces cracked, but eyes awake. They circled him slowly, their glass fingers tapping the floor in perfect unison. From the largest one, the boudoir doll, came a whisper so faint he almost didn't hear it. "He returns through the ones who seek us." The air bent. Nathan fell to his knees. The dolls' mouths began to open one by one, their porcelain teeth clinking faintly as the light bled from their throats. In the white blaze of it, he saw him. A tall figure in a long, dust-colored coat, hands immaculate, eyes hollow, carved with light. Alaric Thorne. He smiled, that same faint, knowing smile. "She was perfect," he said softly. "But I can make you better." Nathan's scream echoed through the house and through every screen in Merritt Hollow as the power grid flickered and failed. The cameras caught nothing. Just the doll, standing still on the table, her eyes pale blue once more. And in the reflection of the television behind her, a man's faint silhouette, still smiling as if admiring his newest work.